Hey guys, Hamsterwheel here with a new video, and today I want to talk about my experience playing on the Warmane PTR server. You see, Warmane is going to release a brand new Burning Crusade server in the near future, and they open up a public test realm for players to test out the content and find bugs that the dev team can then iron out. There are some things that definitely intrigued me to check it out, and there were some things that I wasn't a huge fan of. But regardless, I decided to give their new server a chance and see what they managed to bring to the table as of right now. So, without further ado, let's test some content. The first thing I did was a ramparts normal run. Yes, I know that this is a level 60-ish normal dungeon, and we're doing it as level 70 in heroic gear, but it doesn't really matter how easy it is as long as the mechanics are working properly. So, what did I find? Well, the mob pathing seems just fine. The dialogue pops up correctly and all the audio seems in place, like the Houndmaster in the beginning.
My pets are hungry, and they'll dine on your flesh.
Moving on to the first boss, and everything seems in place here too. He does the knockback, the dialogue and audio pops up correctly, and the two healing ads did their job as well. Now we have Omor, the second boss of Ramparts, and like the first boss, it all works quite smoothly. And then finally the third boss. I was intrigued to see this boss, as this fight is sometimes a little wonky on other private servers, with the pathfinding of the dragon and Vasruden spawning on the ground. Here though, it's all working just fine. Even the dragon comes down in a smooth kind of animation. So in a nutshell, I was very happy with the Ramparts dungeon. I couldn't find any game-breaking bugs, and the overall experience was great. Before we move on, I'd also like to share with you that the chance on hit trinkets seem to work fine, as well as set bonuses from armor. Like the 4 set bonus of the encounter set, which should give you a chance of giving me a buff when I get hit while Mana's shield is active, and as you can see, the buff pops up accordingly. Next up, we did the blood furnace. Throughout the dungeon you can hear Magtheridon's dialogue and audio popping up like it should.
My blood will be the end of you. Vermin, leeches, take my blood and choke on it.
And once again, the pathfinding of mobs are on point. Also, these proximity mines are working correctly, so you gotta be on your toes during this part of the dungeon. At the second boss, the gates open and all the mobs appear in the correct manner. And at the final boss, I once again saw no major flaws, so this is the second dungeon I tried that seems to work great. After those 2 dungeons, I went out to test some non-generic killing quests, starting with the Hand of Gul'dan in Shadowmoon Valley. For this part of the quest chain, we have to collect spirits using this totem. I do get to complete the quest, and the totems do capture the spirits, but they don't show the correct animation. Matter of fact, they don't show any animation at all. Then we arrive at the part where Earthmender Torlok summons the elementals. This is a good benchmark, as there's a lot of dialogue and animation that needs to pop up correctly. And what do you know, this part of the quest chain works flawlessly. Now it's time to go to Netherstorm and do the robot escort quest at the ruins of Enkat. The robot itself follows the correct path, but again there's a few things missing. There's no dialogue from the robot, and there's no animation for when the robot picks up the items. So again, I can complete the quest and the pathfinding is fine, but there are a few things missing here and there. So, third time's a charm, right? Well, let's see, as I set off to do one more non-generic killing quest. This time we find ourselves in Hellfire Peninsula, doing the Natural Remedies quest. The NPC where you hand in the quest actually pops the right dialogue and the correct animation. Matter of fact, I was stunned, because this is the first time I see it working correctly. Then we're off to the giant crystal north of our location. So, how should this work? Well, first you activate the item, start channeling it, and then Pathalion the calculator shows up with animations and dialogue, and at the end there should be an elite mob spawning. Here on Warmane, well, nothing really happens at all. I mean, Pathalion's image does show up, but there's no animation, no dialogue, and at the end he just disappears and the elite mob doesn't spawn. In other words, this one's properly bugged and can't be completed. Kind of a shame. After that, it was time for a heroic steam vaults run, and as I expected, it wasn't exactly a cakewalk. It was really hard, but that's the way it should be. So, what did I find here? Well, we had a few issues here and there. First of all, some of the mobs were evading. We had some combat bugs throughout the dungeon. I had the invalid target bug during the first boss. And maybe I'm wrong about this, but the range of the hurricane, the AoE damage during the first boss, seems a little too big compared to retail. Other than that, the first boss worked correctly, and like I said, it was pretty damn hard, and we needed to bring our A game to kill her. For the second boss, we wanted to be smart and tank him in a different place so it would be easier for us to gather the healing adds when they spawn. And as it turns out, the healing adds were spazzing out and not healing the boss correctly. I don't know if this is bugged all the way or that we made the adds bug because of where we tanked the boss. Either way, we cheesed the hell out of this fight, which was a little unfortunate. Another thing I noticed was the Coil Fang Myrmidon's cleave range that was way off. This is a melee attack and it still hit me even though I was standing 20 yards away. After all that, we did the last boss and that went great. He moved to the barrels, popped his reflect shield, which I have always hated with a passion, and that was the end of the steam vaults. So this dungeon definitely needs some patching up, but all in all, it wasn't working too bad. So of course, I couldn't skip Karazhan and I managed to find a group after doing some quests and dungeons. I wasn't sure what to expect, and sure enough, the first trash pools were a bit wonky. Never mind though, I stuck with it and after a bit we got to the first boss. I waited a bit before doing DPS, and unfortunately the paladin tank wasn't up to snuff, because after pulling 640ish DPS, I over-aggroed and he couldn't get the horse off of me. I then proceeded to tell him he should look into his tanking, cause there's definitely something off if you can generate more threat than a damage dealer doing 640 DPS in Karazhan. He then proceeded to say that I shouldn't have started dealing damage right at the beginning, and that I didn't give him the necessary 5 seconds to build up threat. Right. Pretty sure I did, but whatever. After I proceeded to tell him he was wrong about that too, I got the usual response with corny mama jokes. Judging by his attitude, I could tell he was very mature, open to constructive criticism, and an overall kind-spirited player. There's no way the group would wipe again with him tanking this raid. Oh, never mind. The raid broke up 10 minutes later. Yeah, what a waste of time that was. And then, a few days later, I managed to team up with Orkbit and try Karazhan once again. And again, this didn't go too well. We had several wipes, people DCing, people leaving the raid without a word, and then having to spend ages trying to find a new tank or whatever. In fact, we had so many bumps in the road that we spent hours in this raid, and we only managed to get to Moros before we had to call it a day. So again, third time's a charm, right? Well, no. I decided to try and join a Karazhan group one last time, and again, the raid was plagued with people DCing randomly and leaving after only being in Karazhan for 10 minutes. Then the raid leader himself was offline, and that's when I called it. This is the third Karazhan run that I joined, and I wasted hours and hours trying to see the content, but it's just way too time consuming to try and run a raid with people who just leave without saying a word, disconnect randomly, expect everything to be one giant face roll and whatnot. This is a public test realm where everyone's wearing heroic blues, so you should not expect to clear this in one go without breaking a sweat, and if you leave randomly you're just wasting everyone's time. Sorry about being a little ranty there, but it was rather frustrating for me to get through the content without any success. Anyway, despite not being able to see a whole lot of Karazhan, I did manage to see a few dungeons and some non-generic killing quests. So, what do I think of the server as of right now? Well, to be honest, it looks very promising. The dungeons seem to be scripted really well, the quests are alright, even though some of them definitely could use some work, but overall this server is showing a lot of potential. I also like how the devs and GMs are very active on the PTR and are constantly monitoring raids, dungeons, and they're very quick with addressing and trying to fix certain issues. Also keep in mind that they're still in the PTR phase, so there's still a lot of time for them to improve their already promising looking server. Well, there you have it folks, my experience so far playing on Warmane's PTR server. I'll be back with more content very soon, but until then, I want to thank you for watching this video. I'm Hamsterwheel and have a good one.